In this video, we will talk about the access modifiers. Access modifiers are basically the modifiers, the keywords we give to define the access of different parts of our code. All right. So when we say access, when we say visibility, it means the programmatic visibility. Why do I say that specifically? Because by setting access modifier, it doesn't mean that I cannot see my code. If I have access to a project, I can go and open any single class in it and see the whole code. But what we mean by visibility or access, we mean that does part of the code or is part of the code having an access of another part of the code? That's what we can control using the access modifiers. All right, so we have 4 different access modifiers. We have public, protected, private, and default. Default itself is not a keyword. It's actually the absence of any of these other 3. So if you don't have public, protected, or private, in that case, that's default. All right, the other thing that we need to understand is that Java gives you, so these are the 4 access modifiers that we see here. All right. These are the 4 access modifiers. And these access modifiers can actually be used with the 4 different parts of our code, which are basically the whole class, all right, or the fields in the class, or the methods in the class, or the last part, the constructors of the class, which at this point you don't know what constructor is, but you're going to know it in the future. All right, so we have 4 access modifiers that can be set to different parts of our code. So what does that mean? It means that in simple terms, Java gives you full control that you can use these, control knobs to be able to say a class is accessible in this domain or not. A field is accessible, constructor is accessible, methods is accessible. So it gives you fine-tuned control over every single part of your code, which is amazing. So you can make a class accessible, but certain parts of the class are not, and so on. All right, so to understand the different domains and access and so on, we are going to build this scenario here. We have a package 1 under the package instructor, a subpackage called package 1. It has a class called airplane. An airplane is a very simple class that only has 1 field and 1 method and the class itself in here. And then in the package 1, we're going to build a practice for package 1, all right? And we are going to build an airplane object in there, all right? And then we have practice that is out of the, basically, of the package. It's in a structure package, which contains the package 1, all right? So that is the scenario that we have so far. So we can actually get rid of these so we don't get confused. Keep it very simple, all right? So that's what we have so far. Now, the first thing that we will notice here is that when I have package 1 practice with the airplane in the same package, I went there and I created an airplane object with no extra steps that I needed to do here. I just said airplane B777 is equal to new airplane. The airplane type is Boeing 777, and then B777.takeoff, and that worked. And if I run it, it's going to work and give me, oops, yeah, it's complaining about this one here. So let me comment this for now. So it's going to give me, let's go. All right, here we go. The Boeing 777 is taken off. All right. So that here is very simple, straightforward. We are living in the same package and everything is good. On the other hand, when I try to use the airplane class in the practice class, all right, which lives in a different package, the containing package of package 1, that here caused some kind of an error that says like, hey, which airplane? When you tell me airplane, what do you mean by airplane, right? And in that case, I can import, and I specifically say it's the instructor.package1.airplane, which means the airplane from package 1 is the one that I want to use. All right, so let's look at that here and how the different access modifiers impact this. The first thing I'm going to talk about is going to be the public access modifier, because this is the one that we have seen before. It's the most straightforward. Public basically says you can access anything anywhere, all right? So you can access at the class level, you can access at the package level, you can access at the subclass level, and you can access in the global domain level. So what do we mean by access within the class? Access within the class means that if you have the string airplane type set to public, you can access it within the class. All right, so this is what it means that I can access something that is public within the class. All right, and you will find that the class actually, even if it's private, even if it's anything else, you can access anything within the class. If you live in the same home, you can access anything in the home. All right, so that's for the public part, being accessible at the class level. Being accessible at the package level means that I was able to see airplane in package 1 practice because package 1 practice lives in the same package with airplane. You see, I was able to access airplane. I could see it. All right, so it's accessible. Even though I didn't have to import it, right? I can see it here. Now, what about being accessible at the subclass? This will make more sense once we cover module 7. So for now, it doesn't really make much sense to us. But then what about the global? The global is basically the level of the whole project. So at the whole project level, it says that you can access airplane. But then you ask yourself, okay, this is the global level. I'm in the same project in a different package, but I had to import, and that's fine. The fact that you import it means that you have access to it. The fact that you can import it actually means you have access to it. So in this case, I was able to access it by importing it and by creating an object out of it. So this means by being public, I can access it anywhere in the project. And that's exactly what happened. All of this is because the class itself, airplane, was public. I was able to import it and create an object. The field is public. That's why I was able to access it here. And the method was public, and I was able to access it here. All right. And the same, of course, applies to these 3 in here. Okay. So the next thing I'm going to go to the default. And the default is the absence of public, protected, or private. And what it says here is that you are constrained to be within the class or the package. That's it. And that's why they call it the package private, because you can only access it within the package outside the class. All right, so what does that mean? It means that, and notice here what's going to happen. I'm going to put airplane next to me here. All right. The moment I make airplane, the class itself, to be default access modifier and save, look at what's going to happen. It's package private, which means that if you are with me in the same package, we are good. If you are outside the package, you cannot access me. So that's exactly what happened. Airplane became default access modifier. Within the same package, I was able to use it and access it and do everything I want. Outside the package, I was not even able to import this thing. See what it says? It says the type instructor, the package wanted airplane is not visible. I cannot see it from here. I can see the code, but I cannot see it programmatically from here. Does that make sense? So in this case here, you cannot access the airplane class because you set it and said like, hey, only people within the package can access this class. All right. Okay, so what about if I go and say airplane type is default, all right, but the class itself is public. Look at that. So now this is now going to stop complaining. I can see the airplane class. However, I cannot access the airplane type field because it was set to be protected. Do you see that? Default access. Okay. Okay, now let's put that again back public, and then let's move this one and make it default. I cannot use this method. Do you see that? So Java gives you a very, very detailed control over what you can set to be accessible in your code. All right, so in this case here, I actually don't want to change that. I wanted to change this one. Okay, so public, we talked about it. You can apply it to the class itself. You can apply it to the constructor, all right, to the fields and methods. Okay, the default is also accessible, and you can do the same thing with the class constructor feeds and methods. So the reason why I specify which things I can access or I can set to be default or I set to be public is that some of them are not going to be applicable for certain parts of your code. All right, so now we understood what public is, and now we understood what default access modifier is. Let's talk about the protected access modifier. All right, protected is basically very similar to default, except that it has one like you can think about it as exception. All right, so basically what it says is I'm only limited to the package, just like default. However, if you are a subclass of me and you happen to be outside the home, outside the package, I'm still going to let you access me. All right, so basically protected has some weakness to the family members, So in this case, it says that if you are a subclass, if you're related to me, if you are part of me, all right, and we will understand what subclass is in inheritance, inheritance in the future. In that case, I will allow you to access me even if you are outside my package. All right, but we are not going to be able to see this for now because we don't still have that concept of subclasses. But that's again the only thing that you need to understand about protected. Now, protected can be applied to everything except classes. So you cannot go and say airplane class is protected. You cannot say that. See? It says illegal modifier for the class airplane, only public, abstract, and final are permitted. Okay, so you cannot do that. Okay? So what you can do is that you can go and set this one to be protected. Now, protected, this is going to light that up. Why? Because this is outside the package, okay, but it's also not related to the airplane. Do you see that? So in this case, this class here does not or has no relation with the airplane class. So it's not a family member. So in that case, it's not allowed to access outside the package. Does that make sense? However, this one here is within the same package. It's okay, accessible. All right, and the same goes with here, protected. Can also apply. In this case, you cannot call takeoff. All right. And as we will see in the future, constructor can also be protected. So basically here, what we can say is that protected can only be applied or can be applied to everything except classes. All right. The last one is private, which says you can only access within the class. I don't care if you are in the same package. I don't care if you are related to me. I don't care if you are in the same project. Nothing matters. Only within the class. So what does that mean? All right. It means that I can here, all right, go and say this method or this field is going to be private. So here's the situation. This is the same class. All right. This is the same class trying to access airplane type in here, as you can see. All right. Then we are in the same package, try to access airplane type. And then we are in the same project, but in a different package and try to access airplane type. Look at what's going to happen when I set this to be private. Boom. All of them are complaining. I cannot access here. I cannot access here. Nobody can access unless you are within the same class. All right. And this is the analogy I always say that, if you have like a high-rise building, people are living upstairs, downstairs, you have security guards, right? So these are the public methods. If you want to access these guys upstairs, you have to go through the public methods, okay? But you cannot access them from here directly like this or here, anywhere. Nobody can access it unless you are a public method within the same class. These are the only people who have access to it. And that is the whole concept of the first concept of object-oriented programming, all right, in the next module, which talks about encapsulation, which we will talk about later in detail. All right, so that means private means only you can access it here. Private, you can only, and you can have some methods that are private if you are using them internally, and that's fine. But then again, you cannot use them outside, and that's something to keep in mind. All right. So these are the access modifiers, and we understand now how or what that chart means here. We talked about default. Default can be applied to everything, and by the way, private can also be applied to everything except class. All right. So the default is when we do not mention any access modifier for a class variable method constructor. All right. It's the default access modifier, and only those classes that are in this package can access this class, method, or variable, and no other class outside this package can access those. Protected is similar to the default, right? Except that you allow subclasses that are in a different package to access, right? You can only apply this to methods, constructors, and variables. Okay. And then we talked about public. Public is basically open. Anybody can access it anywhere in the project, no problems. And then the last one is the private, which says that private is only within the same class. People within the same class can access it. So this means only public methods can access the private fields. And in that case, that's the whole idea of the getters and setters as we will see in the future. All right, and that's it for access modifiers.